Welcome to the Oxygen Advantage podcast with your host, Oxygen Advantage founder Patrick McKeown. With the Oxygen Advantage podcast, we aim to show how functional breathing is an essential part of a healthy and well-balanced lifestyle. Each episode, we meet experts in their field from around the world and talk about their lives, their experiences, and how they learned the importance of breathing. Join us and get inspired. Get the Oxygen Advantage.
James Stirling, otherwise known as London Fitness Guy. And we had a conversation, James. It's only last weekend, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, last week. It feels like a month ago already. But it was last week.
Does. I'd love to get an insight into you because your background, you've got a tremendous social media channel. What drives you? What interests you? And where do you see it all going? So all about personal training.
It's been a really interesting journey of my career, really. I'd say I fully started my career working for a football club, for a charitable arm for a Premier League football club. And I was working with young people from the age of 11 through to 21 who were involved in gangs, crime, drugs. And I was working with those young people to get them out of gang culture and into positive careers, environments through the use of sport. And for me, I just feel like sport, fitness, whatever it is you do, has such a positive impact on you as a person and your mental health and your physical health, obviously, that it's just kind of driven me to want to help people improve their fitness or get into fitness and maintain fitness as part of their lifestyle.
And did you see in terms of the youngsters, because very often we would feel maybe as an outsider, looking in, or what were these kids like? Do they have the same vulnerabilities? What factors drove them to get into the gangs? And how did they resonate then in terms of doing physical exercise? And did you then monitor where these children, were they going to, be less likely then to get involved with harmful and...
Yeah, I mean, these kids were based in the estates of Brixton and all over kind of South London, really, and amazing kids, but just with really troubled backgrounds, difficulties with family issues at home. And, the growing up, not a lot of positive role models around, and they just end up in the wrong place, really, doing the wrong things. And it was incredible that how good these kids were at football. And football for me was the vehicle to drive change. And we'd go and deliver sessions with coaches inside the estates with the kids and try and just kind of use football as a way to bring them all together and have an hour of their lives where they don't have to think about anything other than kicking a ball and having fun. And there was some amazing journeys of these kids as well, who are particularly good at football, to filter through to academies of football clubs and go on to play for Premier League football clubs now. And there's some incredible stories. Marcus Rashford came through the same program, I believe, in Manchester, and there's many footballers in the South who have worked through the same program. And what's great is that these Premiership footballers now talk about their own backgrounds and act as a role model for these young people to follow. And sometimes learning in school and academic subjects aren't the way forward, I feel, for pupils to find themselves. And I feel like sport harnesses so many positive attributes that we can carry forward in life that it's a no-brainer that we use sport and fitness to help people find themselves, really.
And plus the other thing is, I suppose, these kids, they feel that they're successful at something, and it's a great motivator.
Yeah, I mean, we used to do some incredible programs in there as well. I remember we used to set up football matches between the Met Police and the guys in the estates. And, it's just about breaking down barriers and kind of bringing this community together to help one another. And the kids did feel good. And, seeing someone go on to pay for an academy inspires the other people in the group to want to better themselves. So it was just an awesome project, and it still runs today. And honestly, if I wasn't working for myself in fitness, I would still be doing that job, because there was nothing more rewarding than helping young people improve their futures.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So you went from there then into your next line?
Yeah, I was peating on the side of work. I was younger and I had a lot more energy back then. But I was peating in the mornings and evenings and then working in the day. So I didn't have a lot of free time, but I never felt like PT was work. I just kind of felt like it was something I was really interested in and I really enjoyed, and I always wanted to work for myself in some capacity. And that kind of really felt like I was doing something for me, following my passion and sharing knowledge and helping other people. So I started working with some people from TV, music, social media, and that kind of helped me grow my own presence, I guess, as well. And then since then, I've just never really looked back, and it's always just been a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. But some amazing opportunities and worked with some amazing people and still work with amazing people every day. So I'm really grateful for the job that I have.
But I don't think you're an ordinary PT. And when I hear PT, sometimes I have in my head it's either a physical therapist or a personal trainer. But a PT is it's a personal trainer. But you seem to go beyond it, because I know you're very much interested in breathing and you're interested in other things. So it's not just really, well, I suppose a personal trainer, typically we think about fitness, but there's more to it than that.
My whole thing has always been about accessibility, and I know the people and the groups of people that I really enjoy to work with. And it's not so much for me about getting someone who's already in great shape in better shape. It's about taking someone who perhaps doesn't like fitness but knows they need to do something for their health and getting them to enjoy the process of it. And sometimes I feel like fitness can get kind of pigeonholed into you have to do this and you have to do this. But I really want to help that person first of all enjoy the workouts they're doing, and then also find their own path of what they want to do and what they enjoy, because the more you enjoy something, the better you are likely to retain doing it through life. So that's really important. But accessibility has always been the most important part for me. So I've always tried to maintain that I provide accessible workouts that people can do with their body weight or just a set of dumbbells, whether they're at home, on holiday, in the gym. And that's really where I get my kicks from, really, in terms of social media.
And in terms of the physical training that you give to people, do some people you just start off walking? Like, where does it start? You know?
A whole different facet of things, really. So if I'm working with someone to improve their running who has never run before and they just want to get to a 5K distance in the course of 8 weeks, I will always assign them with a walk run program. So the first 5, 6 weeks, they probably won't do a significantly long run, but they'll start by doing 90 seconds of walking into 1 minute of running. And if that's too much, they can scale it back and change those timings as much as they need to. And then it's really just about reducing the amount of time they walk for and increasing the amount of time they run for until they can do a first run. And it doesn't feel really daunting and overwhelming, and they can just do a 1 kilometer run on their own, or with their kids or whoever it might be. And that's a really good way of getting people into running, especially because a lot of people, running has become really popular, and a lot of people now will see things on social media, people going for these half marathons before work, and they feel like they should be doing that. But patience is the way to avoid injury and to make the whole process far more enjoyable and manageable.
Yeah, and on social media, every time I see somebody with fitness, they've got their shirt off and a six pack. And for the
I
rest
had a
for
six
the
pack.
rest of us mere mortals, that's we don't go there, you know. So so there's varying levels that are what my point is, that I think we all need to do some physical exercise, and not to feel your point, not to feel that you need to go out for this high end stuff that you see in social media. Just start off where we are.
Always set these markers, don't we, of what we feel is someone that's fit. And we feel like if we can't do that ourselves, then we're unfit. But it's not really the case. And I think it's just about getting the ball rolling. And, maybe you go out and you do a 20-minute walk and you don't have to worry about the running element, and you just get outside and enjoy the benefits that come with being outside in nature, as well as doing the physical exercise of walking. Because nowadays, for me as a personal trainer, I really want to make people aware that the benefits of physical exercise aren't just about how you look, or like you were saying, if you're how defined your six pack is. The benefits are your mental clarity, your stress reduction, your physical heart fitness as well. There are so many benefits. And I feel like as we get older, we start to really dial in on that and think, okay, this is what I should be exercising for.
And do you go into other aspects? Do you go into nutrition? Do you go into sleep? You go into breathing, obviously now, and other tools. Do you look to get them out of their head? In other words, as a PT, they're coming to you for one thing, but you're able to give them a number of different benefits.
For me personally, I've always been very careful that I don't want to deliver something that I don't have the expertise in,
Sure.
which is part of the reason why I came to Oxygen Advantage, is because I wanted to be able to learn before I started giving advice on how people should breathe or sleep. So nutrition is something I've tended to bring other people in who are better at it than I am, because I would rather a better service for the clients that I work with. And if I felt like, if I wanted to do it properly, I'd have to go back and really study that nutrition side of it. And there are just better people at it than me. So it's something I tend to avoid. In terms of sleep, it's quite simple because everyone's wearing technology nowadays. So I can ask for that sleep data, and I can see the results in front of me. So it's made things very easy in terms of tracking kind of one-to-one clients. But breathing was something I became really interested in, primarily because of my own experience. And when I was speaking to you last week, I was saying that I wore a fitness tracker and my heart rate variability was really low. And it kind of made me think, what am I not doing right? Because I'm doing exercise, I'm sleeping quite well. So something is not right in my day that is causing this heart rate variability to be quite low. And ultimately mean that each day I wake up, I'm essentially not ready to exercise. So I started to look at it, and anxiety has always been a really difficult thing for me to manage. And I kind of put the two and two together, and my breathing, I've been told, was very shallow. So I thought, I need to look at this and I need to work out what's going on. And I'd listened to various podcasts you'd done, and I thought to myself, this is what I need to be doing now to give myself the full package of being fit and physically fit, sleeping well, but also breathing well in the remainder of the hours that I'm not doing the other two, you know?
With heart rate variability is very interesting, because even though if you were to go in on Google and put in your age and you put in your height or whatever, male, it will tell you you need to be between this and this. And that can be very off-putting for some people. Really, I suppose with HRV, we need to be looking at where are we now with it, and even identifying. I think you brought up a couple of points there. Sleep. So if somebody is wanting to monitor their HRV, but if they, for example, how do you feel that your sleep then was affecting your HRV?
I feel like my sleep is always fairly good. I don't have kids. I tend to get, 8 hours sleep a night most nights. So my sleep data was pretty good, but my heart rate variability wasn't changing with my sleep data. The two didn't correlate. And I couldn't really understand why. And I think it's because I was pretty stressed and anxious during the day, and my breathing was impacting everything I was doing. And it was just constantly putting my body in a state of high alert and stress without me actually realizing that I was. And over the last 6 months, I probably spent most of my time being aware, and not necessarily doing breathing exercises, but becoming aware of how I do breathe. And sometimes I'll be sitting there working or filming, and I can feel my heart rate, not my heart rate, I can feel my breathing. And I think to myself, hang on a minute, I need to take a moment here to try and steady this, because I'm telling my body that I'm stressed when I shouldn't be. So just becoming aware was the first step in me making a change to how I breathe.
And when you talk about being aware, you're talking about you're doing an activity, but you'll take a brief pause and you'll just check in on your breathing, and you'll ask yourself, is my breathing faster, or is it slow, or is it a natural, nice, slow exhalation, or am I breathing high? Were you a mouth breather?
Yes. And when I say, like, I would notice myself when I was filming and stuff like that, I could hear myself breathing through my mouth when I was concentrating and filming. And I feel like the more I concentrate, the more I would breathe through my mouth. And now, thankfully, I've become really aware of that. So it doesn't really happen anymore. But I've always been a very shallow mouth breather. And I've worked pretty hard over the last year to change that. I take my mouth when I sleep. I'm aware during the day. When I feel stressed, I bring myself inwards and turn to my breathing and try and slow my breathing down. And it's not been an easy process, but it's definitely working.
But you know what? It's probably good that it's not an easy process, because now when you're working with your clients, for many of them, it's not going to be easy for them. But you just haven't read about the journey from a theoretical point of view. You've lived the journey, so you can impart it. So I think sometimes it's good that we find things hard to come by, because then we get it and we're better off able to explain it then to the person. And it's not about achieving perfection anyway. It's just about kind of working with what we have. Um, does your mind race, or did it race? Like when you talk about anxiety, I often wonder, like, what is anxiety? I haven't always got my head around it, you know, that kind of way. Like, or if somebody was listening, how might they know if their mind is overthinking about things, or what? How do you feel it might have impacted you?
Well, I'll take you back a bit. I think it was London Marathon. I ran London Marathon, must have been 4 or 5 years ago now. And I hadn't experienced anxiety before I ran London Marathon. So I've been training not very hard, if I'm honest, for London Marathon. I was busy at the time, which was a poor excuse, but I think I was also just a bit lazy with my running. And I hadn't trained that well, but I got through London Marathon. And when I crossed the finish line, I remember looking at my phone and it had died, and I didn't know where anyone was, and I was looking for my family. And I suddenly thought, oh, I can't get home now. And I just finished this amazing event, and that was my first thought. And then I just felt this surge of heat, panic. My vision went like I call it like kaleidoscope. I felt like I was going to faint. And I checked myself into St. John's ambulance, and they did all their amazing work to kind of bring me back around. And I thought that was quite strange. I put it down to just being fatigued and exhausted. But since that day, for the next 3 years, my anxiety and panic attacks were terrible, to the point where I would go to work some days to personal train. And I remember I had to leave a session, which I've never done, because I felt so overwhelmed and panicked. And I remember just getting home and just crying. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what is causing this. And I felt like I was going insane. And I remember sitting watching a film. I felt like I was going insane. And I think it was around that time I felt like I really had to do something about this, because it was getting so bad. And for people who experience anxiety and panic attacks, which can happen at any moment of your life, it's a very scary process, because you can't rationalize your thoughts, and they just spiral out of control, and it's like a kettle boiling over, and that's it. You're really struggling to gather your thoughts, and you feel like you're going crazy. And then since then, I've had therapists I've worked with, and thankfully over the last 2 years, or maybe a year and a half, it's been a lot calmer. And I think because I'm now aware of how I breathe, when I do feel overwhelmed, I have the tools to be able to slow my breathing down, you know, regulate, give myself that calming feeling. And I haven't had that anxious feeling now for some time, which is great.
I think there's a number of things there. I think now it's because you're practicing breathing, you're going to be more aware of what's going on in the body. You're going to pay attention to the signals, and probably identify sooner when you're pushing it a little bit too hard, irrespective of your watch and all of the data that you're getting. And the second is that your everyday breathing is better. So it's going to make you more resilient, so that you can cope with challenging situations. And even with, say, doing something like a marathon, many people would have run a marathon, but they've never give any consideration of how are they breathing pre-marathon, how are they breathing during the marathon. Like 26 miles with mouth open, breathing fairly hard and fast. There's a lot of breathing going on there, especially if somebody's breathing isn't up to par. Um, what are your thoughts in terms of, so you're a personal trainer, you really keep up to date with everything that's going on, but yet if we went into a gym, I've just put a presentation together for nose breathing during running, and the researchers stood at some point of this 10-kilometer race, and they stood at the side of a road, and they filmed everybody that was running by. And I think their conclusion was 97% of them ran by with their mouths open. How come breathing hasn't been taken into consideration in PT? in personal training. And in terms of, you probably did strength and conditioning, you've probably done a number of different, trainings, but yet breathing wouldn't have been there. Nose breathing, probably zero.
Sometimes I feel like people who have a goal, it can be quite one-dimensional. You either improve your fitness or you improve your aesthetics. You want to lose body fat or gain muscle. And sometimes I feel like it's the same as sleep. If you can't see progress in numbers or on your watch or on the scales or whatever it might be, sometimes it just takes a bit of a back seat and it gets a little bit overlooked. And it's the same as when I say to people, well, let's work on improving your sleep. And they say, oh, I'm not worried about that. And then I say, well, if your sleep's not good, how is your performance the next day? And they'll start to go, oh, well, I haven't really thought about that. Or how are you recovering? Or are you able to perform your best over the course of the week? And I feel like breathing is kind of the same process, really, of trying to change mindset and build it in gradually. So what I try and do now is, especially when I work with people who are looking to run and improve their running performance, I teach a run class that is on the treadmill for 45 minutes of straight running. And in the warm up, I will start to now say to the clients, in this warm up, I don't want you to breathe through your mouth. I want you to keep your warm up through your nose, because it's low intensity. And it's something that I feel like most people is a great starting point. And then as we start to build intensity, and I'll say to people, okay, try and maintain breathing through your nose. And if it gets too much, take a few breaths from your mouth and try and come back to it. And then people will start to do that. And they'll say to me at the end, oh, it's really hard to do that. It's tough. And I would always to say, well, that feeling of air hunger is quite uncomfortable. But I do remind them it's okay to take a few breaths through your mouth and come back to it. And then when we get to the higher intensities, obviously it becomes a lot more challenging. And I don't really expect everyone to be able to do that straight away. So I just kind of let people breathe how they normally would. But especially when it comes to recovery, there's no real excuse to breathe through your mouth when the intensity is super low and you're walking. And that's, for me, is an important cue to say, right, we come back to the breathing through our nose. We try and give ourselves a feeling of calm so that we can perform better when we do our next intervals or our next run on the treadmill. So gradually, I've seen over the course of the last 2 months, people have started to implement this and it becomes a little bit easier. But like I say, it's not an overnight process. And I feel like it's down to the trainers who understand the benefits of breathing to gradually implement these small things so that people become a lot more aware, so that we can make a big difference over a longer period of time.
Totally. Have you ever given any consideration, maybe it's just kind of an idea that comes into my head, that a lot of people who do running and do physical exercise, that they're doing it more so to help with their mind, that these can be highly stressed individuals who tend to run a lot to deal with the stress. And could that be improved upon? Because maybe a runner, because they want to be physically active, may not be the type that's going to do mindfulness. They're not going to necessarily sit down and pay attention to their breathing because that's not their makeup. They like to do physical movement. And can we do more in the fitness industry in terms of superimposing breathing and awareness in terms of improving stress levels? So the person is already doing physical exercise, but as a PT, the application of getting people out of their heads, what's your thoughts on it? Is it something that you've started? Or the first question there is, do many people who run, are they stressed?
So it's a very good question. I think most people are stressed in some capacity, right? And exercise for most people is a stress reduction tool. It might not be their primary focus for exercising, but it's definitely a secondary, because no one goes into a workout or a run or, jumps onto an exercise bike and comes off it feeling worse than they did before. It doesn't happen. So no one has ever said, I feel worse after doing exercise when I started. You might feel more tired, but you don't feel worse mentally. But I think it's, again, drawing into educating, making people aware, and bringing in some of the mental benefits during the workout. How do you feel? Asking those sorts of questions. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people don't really appreciate the mental benefits until they experience some sort of stress. And then they start to go, okay. I mean, for me, I haven't been able to work out for the last week because I felt unwell. And it's only really when I get those situations where I can't exercise that the really important reason for me exercising becomes obvious. It's not about, oh, I'm worried about gaining fat or losing muscle. It's, oh, I want to feel good. I miss that feeling of feeling great after a workout, that post-workout high. And I kind of wish I could say to people who don't exercise, it's a real privilege to be able to do it. And once it's gone, you can't. And I think that it's kind of like it all comes together as a big package, right? We breathe, we move, we sleep, we eat well during the day. This whole package is what makes us feel amazing. And if we can do as many of those pillars as we can, we live an optimal life.
What are when you're putting a post on Instagram, and obviously you've got a tremendous channel. I think Ruth had said to me last week it's something like 800,000 people. Um, what are the topics that younger people you think are resonating with them from a fitness and a wellness point of view? In other words, getting inside the mind of the person who's between 20 and 30 years of age. What are they looking for?
I think there's quite a few avenues, really. It depends on the age of the person. I feel like if you're around like 20 to 25, it probably is a little bit more aesthetic in terms of what you're looking for. When you hit 25 to 30, I feel like you become a little bit more aware of how you actually feel, and that shifts slightly again. And then I feel like 30 plus, you start to really recognize that fitness is an important aspect of your life, not just for how you look, but how you feel. Bodybuilding and that kind of world is still big, and running has become huge over the last year for the younger groups as well. And there's this kind of area now where everyone's kind of a hybrid athlete, which basically means you lift weights for strength and you run for fitness. And I feel like that's a really positive change because it's influenced a lot of younger people to do cardiovascular work when they might have ordinarily just done weight training, which is still amazing. As we get older, we every decade after the age of 30, we lose a huge percentage of muscle mass. So weight training is really important. But I feel like cardio has now come into this, and we have a bit of a more well-rounded package of health and fitness.
So then when you're working with different clients, you're going to tailor the instruction based on what you think are going to be the motivating factors.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, what I've always maintained as a personal trainer is that I feel there's an element of distancing your own training from someone else's goals. For example, if I was into CrossFit and someone came to who wasn't into CrossFit, I wouldn't give them a CrossFit workout because I love it. I've always tried to look at their lifestyle, their goals, and then tailor a package around that I feel is best for them. And then we work on assessing that over the course of 12 weeks, for example. When I first started personal training, I always said to clients who came on board, look, give me 12 weeks and then you are completely free to go because you will have the tools you need to be able to do everything yourself. I will teach you how to lift. I'll teach you how to structure your sessions. I'll teach you how to eat better for your goal and sleep, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the 12 weeks, you will be 100% ready to maintain this for the rest of your life. And after the 12 weeks, few people left because it became a real luxury and they enjoyed having the personal training sessions, but they knew what they were doing. They had the tools, but it's enjoyable to have someone do it for you and take away any planning in your own workout,
Plus, it's not just enjoyable, it actually holds you accountable because you're saying, well, I've no other choice in the matter because James is coming in. And James, I don't want to look stupid in terms of, not having done my homework. I think I think people are just pressurized from so many angles in terms of, like, I was in London last week, and I have to say, I always love genuinely going to London. It's a beautiful city. Um, but there's pressures. Things are quite expensive. It was very busy. You're stuck in traffic. There's so much. It's a city, of course. So people are going to feel that. And I suppose going to you then is kind of a respite. It's a retreat from all of the putting your attention outwards. You know, they're going to James and you're giving them attention. They are giving themselves more attention, which is more important.
It's
So I get
therapy.
that, you know.
That's right. It's, it's an hour to not look at your phone, an hour to focus on you. It's the equivalent of having an hour with a therapist in my eyes.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's equivalent, and it's nothing. It's in terms of going to a therapist, people might be a little bit put off because they feel if I'm going to a therapist, there's a problem with me. Um, Whereas they feel much more comfortable going into working with a personal trainer who's holding them accountable. You know, the kind of way in terms of people, I would say more men than females, but maybe I'm incorrect there. Where do you think it's all going in terms of breathing? So your inroad into breathing, you're an oxygen advantage instructor, and do you see anything changing within the health and wellness? I'm just kind of looking in your eye, or for you to look through where you feel it might be going. Do you feel there's an inroad, whether there is or not? Just teasing that out a little bit.
I feel like breathing has become huge over the last 3 years, maybe.
Mm.
Not just kind of in the work
What's
we do, but
even James? What do you think has driven that?
I think meditation has become a lot more popular. And naturally, with that, elements of breath work have come into it. It's very different to what we do on Oxygen Advantage, but I think it's made people aware that how they breathe impacts their day-to-day life and their sleep. So I think it's become a lot more, what's the right word? Not really popular, but just fundamental for a lot of people.
Mm.
So I think that was possibly an intro to it. And then, breath work, workshops and so on are all over London. There's loads of them now. But what I like about Oxygen Advantage is the kind of performance element that sits within it. And I feel like, if you meditate and you do breath work, it's all about calming, giving you that sense of calm. But why should we focus on how we breathe when we feel calm and not how we breathe when we perform and do everything else we do in the day? You meditate for, I don't know, 10 minutes, let's say. Well, what about the remaining 23 hours that you're going to be breathing in some capacity? So I think people have become a lot more aware, and sports performers, Erling Haaland is, using mouth tape when he sleeps. Igor Swiatek is using it in training as well. And I feel like all these things are driving awareness to it. And I really hope that more high profile sports performers who are using these techniques start to make people more aware, because every time it happens, I feel like it turns people to go, oh, okay, that there is validity behind this and we should be doing this, because people seem to turn to sports performers more than they do published articles and published journals, right?
For sure. But do you know anything about some of the athletes? Because I know, because I've worked with some of them and they've asked me that it cannot be disclosed on the basis that they don't want to talk about what they're doing publicly because they'll give their competitor ideas as well. So it's kind of a closed space. In some way, that's a deterrent then to the awareness spreading. But I think eventually it is. It's really changed the last 3 years. I would agree with you. I think there's been a greater awareness in the last 3 years than the previous 19 years.
Hmm. And like I say, I've gone on this journey myself, and what I'm really keen to do is share studies and share, you know, tests that have been done that show this is the case, because people might say, oh, no chance you can run 5k or 10k with your mouth shut, but I really want people to give this a try and recognize that it's not a change you can make overnight. You cannot go and run a 5k at your maximum pace with your mouth shut. It will not happen, but you can gradually start to train your body to adapt to managing carbon dioxide in your body better. And I think that for me is the kind of message that I'm trying to share with people who I work with.
So just coming to a close, in terms of people, if they wanted to make contact with you, how do people find you?
Well, I mean, my Instagram is the place for accessible workouts. I've posted around, I don't know, 3,500 times
Wow.
on Instagram, and I try and make sure that every post I do has some value in it, whether it's a workout or information about why we should strength train, or how to breathe more efficiently for your workouts or your sleep, whatever it might be. So I try and always add some value. And my Instagram is London Fitness Guy, which is always quite a strange name to give, but it's become second nature to me now over the last 10 years. And that's my main place of contact. I have an app as well called Power, PWER, that is. And that's on the App Store. And that is basically the Netflix of workouts from me. It has everything on there. And I've got well over 10 programs that people can follow for specific goals. And what I like about these workouts is I take you through them from start to finish. And each workout is around 30 minutes long. So it's, again, accessible. You can do it without any equipment, and you can do it from a small space in the corner of your home, which is where I film most of them from. And it's just a fun way to get results, but in a short amount of time and in hopefully a relaxed environment.
It's been a pleasure, James. Thanks very much. And again, I think it's a great name, by the way, London Fitness Guy. It's very memorable.
That's why I changed it, because I think people said, "Oh, who is he? Who is James Stirling?" And so I said, "Oh, he's like a London fitness guy." And I thought, I quite like that. I'm going to keep that.
Yeah, totally. No, it's great. Last time I heard of a name was the Magician, and he called himself. Somebody was in the audience saying, "Oh, that guy is Dynamo," and he changed his name on the basis of that. So sometimes, yeah. So people looking for brand name, we have to listen to what's going on around us.
I bet.
A pleasure, James. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Eat well, sleep well, breathe well, and do the best you can on your workouts. That's got to be the thing for me. And like everything, when we strive for perfection, we quite often feel disappointed and disheartened. But there is no secret formula to living your best, most fit and healthy life. It's just about making small changes to your day-to-day life where you possibly can. And if you can't do it one week, it doesn't matter. Just make sure the next week you get back on it and you start the process again. Like I have, feeling ill over the last week. It's a lifestyle, and some days are far worse than others, and some weeks are really hard with work or childcare or whatever it might be. But fitness will always be there. And when you come back to it at any point in your life, that's the start of a new process again, a new journey, and you've got to commit to it and keep coming back.
And as one guy said to me, well, why would you put in all of the effort into doing training or looking after your diet? Well, the result is that you feel good about yourself. You feel great.
I always say everyone's main goal for working out should be to live a long life as your first goal. Abs will disappear and fade, but you only get one life. So that should be everyone's primary goal.
Great. Thank you very much, James.
Cheers, Patrick.
Thank you for listening to the Oxygen Advantage podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and maybe take the time to leave us a review. The Oxygen Advantage podcast is available from all your podcast providers.